So today I'm going to be talking about the Einsatzgruppen. These were a brief overview of task forces, special action groups that were made up of security police and SD members who were part of the SS intelligence service that followed the German army as it invaded and occupied territories in Europe. They are more commonly known as mobile killing squads, and they played a huge role in this systematic murder of the Jews with mass shootings organized in Soviet territory. So I'm going to give you 3 key facts and then I'm going to get into the details. So key fact number 1, they were, like I said, special units that followed the German army as they occupied territory, especially Soviet territory, and they were made up of police and SD members, and they just followed them and did mass killings as they went along. Well, key fact number 2, with the help of the Waffen SS, the police units, army, allied forces, collaborators, they helped kill thousands of Jews, Roma, communists, and even Soviet civilians. And it's just not everyone, but a lot of people helped in this, and I don't really know why. And then key fact number 3, well, they were the key perpetrators of these mass shootings. This was prior to the final solution, but the main group that actually formed part of this execution of the Jews were the Einsatzgruppen. And more than a third of all Jewish victims in the Holocaust died in these mass shootings. So they can't be excused. They did way too many killings, thousands and thousands, and even millions, like reaching the millions. And it's just, I never understood why. And I know why? It's brutal murders, and I'll get into the details in a bit, but yeah. Well, at first, their role wasn't to commit these mass murders. At first, they followed the German army into, like I said, into a country, and they were there to secure the territory, to make sure that that territory would remain German. And that was their initial role. They would maybe identify and neutralize any potential threats and enemies of German rule. So if a prominent figure was living in an area, they would neutralize that threat. Interpret that as you will. And yeah, they would seize important sites. So say they crossed some army barracks, they would seize that because they knew if any resistance would come along, that would be the first place they would go. So that's what they want. And they also prevented any sabotage. So they made sure everything was working, everything was going well, so the Germans could just continue going through, secure that area, and prevent any resistance from emerging. As well as also recruiting collaborators and people who would help them with this advance into Soviet territory, as well as establishing intelligence networks. But that's part of the whole securing everything. Well, when Germany attacked Poland in September 1939 and the Second World War started, their role kind of changed. They started killing civilians who were perceived as enemies. So you had some tie to any of the Allied forces rather than the Axis powers, you could be killed because you were seen as a threat. Well, units of the Waffen SS or the police, local collaborators, they shot thousands of Jews and tens of thousands of members of the Polish elite. So just people who could have potentially gone against the Germans, they were killed. And this is not even their main job. And it's not even what they're known for. And they already killed thousands and thousands of people. Well, in June 1941, when the advance of the Soviet Union was taking place, Hitler started this war of annihilation. Well, the Einsatzgruppen became really, really important for Hitler because their role, it greatly increased, and now was not only targeting people who could go against the Nazi regime, like people who were perceived as a threat, but just anyone the Nazi regime didn't like. So Communist Party, I mean, people who know from the who are from the non-communist party were executed. Soviet state officials, who I mean, Soviet Union was a communist country. Yeah, it's not a country, but yeah, Soviet Union, communist. Well, anyone who was a state official would be linked to the Communist Party and executed. All Roma were also executed, who were gypsies, and Jews of any age and gender. So they didn't discriminate. When it came to the Jews, they killed everyone. They didn't discriminate against old people or young people. No. They killed every single Jew. So that's not nice. And it's not even the main thing they did. That's coming further on. Well, the way they could do this is because they were at war, so they could have a kind of cover. They could do things without having to report everything. So they were more secretive, and they said, "Oh my God, we need this. We need these killings for military reasons. We can't justify them. They're not pointless killings." So there were no consequences. Well, during this period, from June 1941 onwards, well, around 500,000 people died. The vast majority were Jews, and this period of, I said, 9 months, 500,000 people died in 9 months. Well, in the four Einsatzgruppen sent to territory, there were 3,000 members, which is a lot, but if you take into account the numbers they killed, it's nothing. I mean, it wasn't only them who did the killings. Like I said, Waffen SS, police, Wehrmacht, Romanian forces, local collaborators, just everyone who was a Nazi sympathizer kind of was involved in these killings. We were a local collaborator. That did not mean that you went there with your gun and killed them. That meant you helped identify them and even kill them. But the main role of these local collaborators was pointing out the Jews. So if you knew your neighbor was a Jew, you could say, "Hey, Einsatzgruppen, my neighbor here, he's a Jew, so kill him," and they would just arrest the guy and kill him. Well, that meant that many of the killers and victims knew each other, and they were neighbors, colleagues, and even when they were killing them, people recognized each other. And if you were a victim, you would see your neighbor with a gun about to kill you, and the betrayal they must have felt. I mean, never mind the fact that it's a betrayal in society, because people killing other people, genocide. That's obviously not okay. But imagine if it's your neighbor killing you. And I think one of the most brutal things the Einsatzgruppen did was, in 2 days in September 1941, a small detachment of Einsatzgruppen C, because there were 4 groups, A, B, C, D, and inside these groups there were detachments. Well, they, along with Waffen SS or the police and Ukrainian auxiliaries, they shot 33,771 Jews in Babi Yar, a huge ravine just outside of Kiev. Over 33,000 Jews killed in just 2 days by a small group of people inside Einsatzgruppen C. So if you just think, there are 3,000 members in the Einsatzgruppen, 3,000, and a small group of people, a very small fraction of that, killed 33,000 people, along with collaborators, obviously, but just 2 days. Well, once more and more territory started to get into Nazi control, SS police, the SS and the police, they replaced the Einsatzgruppen, and they still conducted the mass shootings. These did not stop, but they weren't present. The Einsatzgruppen were the ones doing them. This massacre is often referred to as Aktion, Aktion. That's that. And it was when Jews and other victims were rounded up in order to report to a central destination. So Jews were either arrested and taken there, or had to report there for whatever reason. Then they were being marched or transported to the killing site. If they were marched, it was brutal, many kilometers without food, without water. And if they were transported, this wasn't the good way, because they were packed in the vehicles, a lot of people, really uncomfortable, no food, no water. But this was just the beginning of their suffering. They would then strip of their clothes and their valuables, and driven in groups to pits. And there were huge pits, huge ravines, in which they will be killed there. And there were two ways that this would happen. Either when you get there to a new place and there's nothing there, the Jews are made to dig this pit and then die there. Or if the pit was already there, they would just either stand on the edge or stand in the pit. But literally, they were made to dig their own graves. If I remember correctly, there's this scene in Schindler's List in which it kind of shows like one of the, I don't know if it's the operation of the Einsatzgruppen, but one of these mass killings. And their assistants or the Einsatzgruppen themselves, they would either line the victims up on the edge of the ravine, so when they were shot, they would fall in, or just place them in the ravine, shoot them, and they would just be there already. So they didn't have to transport the bodies. It was kind of efficient in the eyes of the Einsatzgruppen, and they didn't have to work as much. And but there was still a huge psychological impact in this, obviously. And what's really horrible about this is that if you were unlucky enough, because everyone there was lucky, but if you were at the back of the line when you were transported to the pit, you would see your friends, your family, people you know, your neighbors being executed in front of you just before you die. So you would see your friends executed, and then you would be executed yourself. So that's the added torture of seeing your friends being killed. And it was kind of efficient in the eyes of the Nazis, but not efficient enough. They were really resource intensive. They required huge numbers of people, as well as guns, ammunition, transport. They had to move the Jews there, and that was a lot of trouble. So they said the Nazis came up with a solution. They would use these vans, now known as Chemowells. Anyway, these vans, they were really tight packed, and they would put the Jews in there and close the doors, and this pipe would feed from the exhaust to the sealed passenger compartments. This would mean that the carbon monoxide would go into where the Jews were, and as they were being driven to the mass graves, they would be asphyxiated, and by the time they got there, they were already dead. But it did take a long time to kill a lot of people, because only a certain number of people could fit in these vans. And while this was happening, the executions were still taking place. They didn't stop. And also, this didn't really help with psychological impact, because Einsatzgruppen people had to physically move the bodies from the chemo vans to the pits. So the psychological impact was there. It's just, they didn't actually shoot the bullet, but still. Well, the mass shootings ended up being the preferred method of execution until the final solution came along, because you could understand that in the eyes of Nazis, they would say, okay, really efficient. They would not waste any food, they would not waste any water, maybe transport and manpower, but not food and water. And they would dig their own graves, and they would just like stand on the edge or stand there, and when they were killed, they fell down, they would be there. Well, during the Holocaust, well, around from 1.5 million to 2 million Jews, no, not Jews, but 2 million Holocaust victims died in mass shootings or gas vans in Soviet territory. And that just puts an end to the Einsatzgruppen. There, I mean, I never understood. I mean, I know, like, I understand the need to execute these people in such a brutal manner because I don't know. And I mean, it's not even okay. Fine. The Jews would be killed. It was brutal, but also that would obviously take a toll on the people who were forced to participate in these Einsatzgruppen. Not everyone went there willingly, and that could not be easy. I mean, Jews, the psychological impact and the nightmares they had. Some survived, and there's actual testimonies. I read one of this girl who fell into one of the. I mean, she was shot. She didn't die. Fell into the pits, and she was there for like I think 2 days I mean a few hours or days. She managed to crawl out. Most people were dead. There was a lot of blood everywhere, chaos. Her friends and family had died, and the trauma, just the absolute trauma. And maybe even if they managed to survive that, maybe they would be arrested again later on and then sent to the gas chambers at an extermination camp. The suffering would not end there. And apart from that, like, that's suffering enough for the Jews, but also if people of the Einsatzgruppen, they would be like psychological impact, and if they refuse to take an order, some would even executed because of refusing commands. So, I mean, yes, that's not as bad because these people were actually committing mass genocide, but still, I have never understood. Like, this just how could humanity just do that? I've never really understood, and I never will be, and I hope there's never anything like this again. I know I mean, right now there is kind of a like in China with the Muslims, but I like hope that nothing like this is happening. That's terrible, but I don't know what to say. It's horrible. Yeah. Well, this was not a happy video, and yeah. So thank you for watching.